If you know someone could die from walnuts, and you still put them in the cookies, then it's no longer a joke. It's attempted murder. I woke up on a stretcher, inside an ambulance. My throat was burning. My body convulsed, as if it were fighting itself. The nurse leaned in close to my face and shouted, "Breathe, Eleanor, don't let it win." Liquid fire of adrenaline shot through my veins. I don't remember when I collapsed. All I remember is the sweet smell of chocolate chip cookies and the final bitter aftertaste of walnuts. The very thing I was allergic to. The very thing that could kill me in less than 3 minutes. That picnic was supposed to be a relaxing weekend. A small group of close friends from college, laughing, grilling, taking photos. I even brought the white wine Melissa loved. Melissa Grant, 31 years old, is a freelance PR consultant. Once, my best friend in the world, the one who knew all my secrets. The one who knew I had a severe walnut allergy had even seen me hospitalized for it last year. And then, she handed me the cookie. "Homemade," Melissa said brightly. "Go on, it's safe. No nuts." I bit into it. One bite. Sweet. Rich. Strange. I swallowed, and instantly knew something was wrong. My heart was pounding wildly. My throat tightened, as if someone was squeezing it from the inside. I stumbled to my feet, waving my hands. I can't breathe. "Oh, come on, she's doing it again." Jordan scoffed. 29 years old, a software engineer, Melissa's boyfriend. Every time we hang out, Eleanor's got some new, dramatic thing going on. The others hesitated. Claire, 30 years old, a night shift nurse in the ER at Mission Hospital, stepped forward. Her face shifted from skeptical to horrified in just 3 seconds. "She's going into anaphylaxis," Claire yelled. "Everyone, move." She pulled an epinephrine pen from her personal first aid kit, injected it into my thigh, hard, fast, without hesitation. I don't remember what happened next, only the wail of ambulance sirens, the sound of someone crying, maybe me, and one sentence whispered in my ear, sharp as a blade. I just wanted to see if she was really allergic. Melissa's voice. 4 days later, I woke up in the hospital. My mother, Helen Brooks, 56 years old, a retired attorney, sat by my bed, her eyes red. "You nearly died," she said, gripping my hand. "Melissa, she's in custody," Claire testified. I stared at the white ceiling. No more tears, just a dry, empty hollow in my chest. Some part of me had died the moment that cookie touched my tongue. And yet, they still called it an accident. Jordan posted a story calling me a drama queen. Some friends said, it was probably just a misunderstanding. Melissa still texted me, just one line. "I didn't think you were that weak. I used to think betrayal only happened in love. I was wrong. The cruelest betrayal. It's when the friend you trust most with their own hands puts death in your mouth. And in that moment, I swore I would not let this end with an apology. I would drag the light down and shine it straight into the face of the truth. Melissa Grant chose to play a dangerous game. She forgot that I, Eleanor Brooks, am not so easy to erase. Can I turn this betrayal into the fire that flips the script I didn't cry the morning I was discharged from the hospital? I just stood silently in front of the mirror, staring at the skin darkened by medication. One cheek was bruised where the IV had been. My eyes were still swollen. My throat felt as dry as sand. My mother drove in silence, not saying a word. The entire drive home felt like a funeral. Except this time, the one who had narrowly escaped death was me. I received 4 messages within 48 hours. Not from Melissa. Not an apology. You're kind of overreacting, you know. Melissa didn't mean it. Maybe she just grabbed the wrong packet of powder. Don't start threatening with lawyers. Eleanor, you're embarrassing the whole group. I heard you even staged your collapse right when a nurse was nearby. The one that hurt most was the last message from Stacy Flynn, 32 years old, a financial analyst who had been a bridesmaid in my called-off wedding last year, the one who once cried for me, now calling me a drama queen. I sat at the kitchen counter, eyes fixed on my laptop screen. Jordan's Instagram post was getting over 4,200 likes. People only have a severe reaction to walnuts if they eat enough of them. Don't let anyone use illness to control the narrative. Underneath were countless comments, mocking, sarcastic. They didn't tag my name, but I knew. I shut the screen. My heart pounded like it was trying to escape my chest. That feeling came back: fear, isolation, and humiliation. My mother made tea and set it down in front of me. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Just being alive is enough. I wanted to believe her, but I had seen Jordan's face when I collapsed. I had heard Melissa laugh and say, I just wanted to see if she was real. No, being alive isn't enough. Surviving while being smeared, that's the real hell. I didn't sleep for 3 nights straight. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard their laughter. Melissa is calling me weak. The group thought I was faking it. Only Claire believed me. She sent a message. I'm willing to be a witness. Anytime. I picked up my phone, scrolled through every single comment. The more I read, the more invisible I felt. The person who attacked me was being celebrated as the victim of oversensitivity, and I, the one who almost died, was painted as someone making up a story for attention. I sat in the dark, bit down hard on my lip. Blood welled up. I didn't even feel the pain. In my head, one sentence echoed, if you let her walk away, you're teaching the whole world that hurting you is perfectly okay. I opened my laptop again. I started writing down everything, every word Melissa had ever said. Every time she had made a joke about my allergy in the past, I gathered messages, photos, audio clips from when I told the group about my allergy. I wasn't doing this to scare her. I was doing it because I couldn't stand being turned into a punchline. Not again. If you've ever felt like I've been betrayed, belittled, humiliated, hit follow on Revenge Mark. We're not here to forget. We're here to take back justice. The next morning, I walked into a law office. I printed out the evidence, sat up straight. My voice didn't shake. I want to file a lawsuit against Melissa Grant for intentional harm and for defamation. The lawyer looked at me and nodded. You've got strong evidence, but be prepared. They won't go down without a fight. I looked him straight in the eye. Good. I want them to fight, because this time, I'm not playing defense anymore. Will Eleanor have the strength to take on an entire network of former friends when she's the only one standing on the side of truth beyond the next door? Is her very first counterattack. I sat in the lawyer's office, waiting for him to print the documents. Outside the window, magnolia petals were falling, one by one, silently, as if spring had no desire to stay with me. To be honest, the lawyer looked up. Melissa might only get an administrative fine. Proving intent will be difficult. I froze. But she knew very well I was allergic. She'd seen me pass out at that bar last year. She knew, but without words, messages, or direct evidence. He shrugged. the court will assume it was negligence, not a conspiracy. I left the office with a thick stack of papers, not evidence, but a carefully bound folder of helplessness. That night, I opened Instagram Live. Melissa was live. She was putting on lipstick, laughing with her fans, showing off her new workout outfit, joking around with Jordan, not a hint of remorse. I typed into the comment box, "What about the walnut cookies?" No one answered. The comment vanished within 2 seconds. Another user replied, "Eleanor still can't let it go, pathetic." I unplugged my phone from the charger, threw it onto the bed, stood frozen in the middle of the room. Melissa wasn't scared. Not at all. 2 days later, I went to my cousin's birthday party. The whole family from my mother's side gathered. I planned to keep quiet, but my distant Aunt Irene, 68, a retired librarian, smiled and said in the middle of dinner, "You have to learn to let things go. Live long enough and you'll see. Forgiveness is the best medicine." Someone nodded. Another chimed in. "Anyway, that girl didn't really hurt you. Probably just joking around." I gripped the plastic fork in my hand. It bent, nearly snapped. When everyone went out to the yard to watch fireworks, I hid in the laundry room, closed the door, sat down on the floor. In the darkness, echoes rose from my memory. "She's acting again. I didn't think you were that weak. Let it go. It's not worth it," I whispered, as if speaking to someone or to myself. "If I do nothing, I'll disappear. I'll let Melissa define who I am. I cannot let that happen." That night, I wrote in my journal. The first line, "I will take it all back by my own hands." I began reading Law, Behavioral Psychology, How to Build a Personal Case File, Similar Court Cases. I saved Melissa's posts from years ago, compared to her wording, the times she joked about allergies. I looked up federal laws on willful endangerment, noted each clause, and then one day, I stumbled on a comment in an amateur law forum. If a person has made repeated jokes about the same subject before causing serious consequences, that behavior can be considered reckless disregard for life. I saved it. My heart pounded, not from fear anymore, but from something else awakening. The next day, I went to the old cafe where Melissa and I used to meet every week. The barista, Nina, a 25-year-old part-time, recognized me. "Oh, you're Melissa's friend. Right. She always joked about your cookie allergy." I froze. "Can you be specific?" Nina scratched her head. "One time she said, if I ever wanted to kill Eleanor, all I'd need is a handful of walnuts." Then laughed. "We thought she was joking." I set my coffee cup down. My hands were ice cold. In my head, it was no longer the sound of Melissa laughing, but the sound of justice's wheels beginning to turn. I started waking up earlier, not to go to work, but to fight. 6:05 a.m. I sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, black coffee with no sugar. On the screen was the website for the North Carolina office of the Attorney General. I read every line like I was breathing it in. Intentionally causing injury through reckless behavior may be subject to criminal prosecution if motive and awareness of the potential harm can be proven. Prove the motive, prove the awareness. I underlined each word. Every single one was a blade slicing through the fog, which Melissa had used to hide her guilt. I put up a whiteboard right on the living room wall. I divided it into 3 columns: true statements, suspicious actions, possible witnesses under the 3rd column. I wrote the first name Claire West, a nurse who is 30 years old, witnessed the entire anaphylactic shock. And now I had another Nina Johnson, 25 years old, cafe barista, heard the threat, wants to kill Eleanor. I circled that line in red. But witness statements alone weren't enough. I needed evidence. I signed up for an online course on legal audio recording and evidence collection. Cost $215, expensive for my freelance budget, but cheaper than silence. I learned how to place a microphone, adjust its direction, and how to ask questions that make the other person reveal themselves. A week later, I called Claire. Her voice was as gentle as I remembered. "Are you sure you're okay?" "Not yet," I replied, "but I need you." We met at a small tea shop on Chestnut Street. Claire arrived in her nurse's uniform, exhausted after a 12-hour shift. I handed her a copy of my medical records as proof of my allergy. She looked at me, said nothing, just nodded. "I'm willing to testify," Claire said. "If no one else stands with you, I will." That night, for the first time in weeks, I felt believed. Not like a pretender, not like a troublesome victim. I was someone, standing up. I changed the way I dressed. No more baggy sweatpants and stretched-out sweaters. I bought 2 simple suits, one beige, one navy. My eyes still looked tired, but my gaze was different. Something in me was shedding its old skin. I began rewriting every detail of the incident. A clear, precise timeline. I wrote it by hand. The feel of the pen scratching across paper was like sealing pieces of my soul into it. One afternoon, while cleaning the kitchen, I found the small box Melissa had given me for my birthday last year. Inside, the card was still there. May we always be allies, able to understand each other without saying a word. M. I held the card in my hand. The paper had yellowed. "The handwriting is still sharp." I laughed. Cold, short, final. I cut the card in half, then into 3 pieces, then 6, dropped them into the sink, turned on the water, let each memory break apart, just like the trust I once had in Melissa. One night, I came across a post from Holly James, 33 years old, a public health reporter and an old college friend, announcing she was looking for cases of medical abuse. I messaged her. "I have a story, I have evidence, and I have a name." 3 minutes later, Holly replied, "Meet me. Bring everything." I knew. I was stepping onto a road I could never turn back from. Melissa knew how to manipulate, but I was learning how to expose. And this time, when the spotlight hits, no one will be able to laugh again. The article went live at 7:12 on Monday morning in the featured section of the special column Voice of the Victim, curated by Holly James. Headline, "I almost died because of a cookie, and she just laughed." No real name, no portrait photo, just E. A clear, detailed story, complete with witness statements, and a closing question that sends chills down your spine. If it were you, would you forgive someone who put walnuts in a cookie, knowing you could die by 9 a.m.? The article had already been shared over 18,000 times. I sat in a small corner cafe, my hand trembling as I held an espresso. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The first text was from Claire. "I'm proud of you." Then my mom read the article. "You wrote it beautifully. I'm with you." And then, a name I never thought would appear, Stacy Flynn. "Eleanor, I read it. I'm sorry. I was wrong." I set my phone down on the table. My eyes stung, not from tears, but from something awakening inside me. By noon, the article started circulating in local Facebook groups. People began connecting the dots, piecing things together. Melissa G. Isn't she that famous PR girl in Asheville? She joked about allergies on TikTok last year. I didn't have to say a word. Didn't have to speak up. The internet did the rest. A clip from last year resurfaced Melissa, live streaming, joking, if someone pisses me off, I just slip a little nut into a cookie game over. That clip blew up. I rewatched it in my room. No lights on. Only the glow from my screen. My heart pounded. Not from fear, but because for the first time, I felt like I wasn't crazy. The next day, Melissa shut down all comments on her personal accounts. Jordan posted a story, media manipulation, don't believe everything you read. And then, the message came. Low blow, Eleanor. Thought you were better than that. I read it over and over, smirked. No, Melissa, I'm not better. I'm awake. I saved everything. Screenshots, comments, posts. I made a folder Phase 1 disruption. I still didn't sleep well. The nightmares lingered. But when I woke up, I knew one thing: I was taking back control of the narrative. No longer Eleanor who collapsed. But Eleanor stood tall, staring straight into the face of the one who almost killed her. If you've ever been hurt, if you've ever been told you're overreacting, and if you've ever been laughed at for daring to survive, subscribe to Revenge Mark. Here, we tell the stories they once tried to bury. But then, the last message of the day made me pause. From an anonymous account. Just 4 words. You think you've won. I didn't know who it was. Melissa Jordan. Some faceless stranger. But when I read it, I didn't panic. I saved it. Logged the time. Tracked the IP if I could. And I added one more line to my planning board. They know. They're starting to fight back. I had thrown the first stone into a still pond. But was I ready for the undertow about to rise? I knew the wave was coming, but I didn't think it would hit so fast and so hard. 3 days after the article, I received an email from Human Resources. We have received several anonymous reports regarding inappropriate conduct by Ms. Eleanor Brooks in online communities. Please come to the office to discuss. I read it 3 times. I couldn't believe my eyes. I work freelance, but I still collaborate on design projects with Harper & Lang, a boutique interior design firm in Asheville. I have never missed a deadline, never violated the code of conduct. But now, just one email, one rumor, and it's enough to make people doubt. I went to the office. Linda Marks, 45, the HR manager, looked at me coldly over her black-rimmed glasses. Someone accused you of using your reputation to slander others online. We're not drawing any conclusions, but it would be best if you stepped back from your current project for now? I nodded, left the office without saying a word. My hand gripped the strap of my bag tightly. My eyes burned hot. But no tears fell. No, not this time. That evening, I received a second email. No sender name. When you fell, who was there for you, and now you think you can just get back up and ruin someone else's life. Watch yourself. Eleanor. The internet moves fast, and it remembers. I forwarded it to Holly, the reporter. She replied within 10 minutes. They're going after your reputation. That's step 1. Are you ready? Because this is the hardest part. I didn't sleep all night. Lying in the dark, eyes wide open, only one image in my head. Melissa, sitting in front of a computer, that smirk is curling up. Each click was like a bullet aimed at me. The next morning, I stopped by my usual coffee shop. Nina, the young barista, whispered as she handed me my coffee. Melissa and Jordan were here yesterday. They know the article is about you. I heard your name. I looked at her. Can you be more specific? Nina nodded, her voice dropping lower. They said they're going to bring you down to where you belong. Jordan is hiring someone to dig up dirt on you. I let out a short, sharp laugh. Dirt. If they think I have something to hide, they're wrong. I've already been exposed once. I've already been knocked down. Now, I have nothing left to lose. I called Claire. Her voice was tense. They just sent an email to the hospital, accusing me of prescribing the wrong medication during my shift last week. I shot up from my chair. What? Claire whispered. Luckily, my record is clean. But Eleanor, they're going after everyone standing beside you. I hung up. My eyes locked on the whiteboard calendar hanging on my wall. I added a new line at the very bottom. Phase 2 retaliation target allies, reputation, career. I circled it in red ink. Twice. Tight. Clear. Steady. I opened my laptop. Went back into my Google Drive evidence folder. Clicked into the audio recordings folder. Dragged out the file, Melissa Coffee Shop OG4. Just a walnut will do it? I played it again. Her voice came through, distinct, casual, arrogant. She's allergic. Right. Then it's too easy. If I wanted to, I'd just put in half a teaspoon. I closed my eyes. For the first time in 3 days, I breathed evenly again. Melissa thought she could strike from behind, but she forgot. I've learned how to strike head-on. I didn't think that moment would come so soon. And when it did, it was so quiet that almost no one noticed, except Melissa. Tuesday morning, at 9:17, I sent the audio file to Vanessa Cole, 38 years old, investigative editor at the Asheville Daily Standard, a sharp-minded woman, unafraid of confrontation. I wrote only one line. If you need more information on the cookie and allergy case, here's the part no one's dared to make public. 14 minutes later, Vanessa called back. We'll run the story at 5 o'clock this afternoon. Are you sure, Eleanor, this could bury her? I exhaled slowly. No, Vanessa, I don't want to bury her. I just want her to know I'm still standing right here. 5:00 p.m. The article hit the front page. The headline didn't need embellishment. Exclusive audio file. Alleged nut-planting suspect admits just half a teaspoon is enough to kill her. Almost instantly, social media exploded. On Twitter, the hashtag #DarnNutcaseMelissa shot up to the top 3 trending in the state. Countless users called her actions manipulative, malicious, borderline criminal. Many dug up the old video clip this time, paired with the new audio, an entire chain of evidence pieced together by strangers online, as if every single one of them was helping me rebuild the story. No longer a rumor, but the truth now is with sound. I sat in my room, staring at the screen. The comments rolled in by the second. She should be arrested. Eleanor, you're a survivor. Don't let silence kill again. I once almost died from anaphylaxis. Thank you for speaking out. The phone rang. Linda Marks, HR manager at Harper & Lang. I swallowed and picked up. Eleanor, we're sorry. It's clear you're the victim here. The project is reinstated, and we'll be issuing a public statement tomorrow morning. I closed my eyes, placed my hand over my chest. For the first time in weeks, I felt a deep breath truly my own. That night, Melissa locked all her social media accounts. Her TikTok account vanished. Her PR firm, Lighthouse Media, where she freelanced, issued a statement. We are suspending all contracts with Melissa Grant, pending an internal investigation. I didn't celebrate, didn't pop open the champagne, just sat still, pen in hand, scribbling aimlessly on a sticky note. Half of me felt vindicated. The other half felt strangely hollow. Claire called. "See, I told you. Justice always comes, even if late." I stayed quiet for a few seconds. "Yeah, but it never comes alone." "What do you mean?" I didn't answer right away. I looked out the window. The street was silent. A soft breeze stirred the curtains. But inside me, something still hadn't settled. Because I knew. Melissa wasn't the type to quietly back down. She was waiting. She would find a way to strike back bigger, nastier. I had hit her where it hurt the most. But was I truly ready for the blow that was coming next? I thought I had backed Melissa into a corner. I was wrong. 3 days after the article, an anonymous account released a blurry video spliced together from a party 2 years ago. In that video, I was laughing. A friend handed me a slice of cake. I ate it. No coughing, no reaction. The clip's title, "Eleanor Pretending to be Allergic to Manipulate People." It spread like wildfire. Within 6 hours, the video appeared on gossip sites and anti-groups. The comments flooded in. I knew it. This act is way too familiar. A true drama queen. She deserves an Oscar for that performance. I sat frozen in front of my screen. That video. I remembered that party vividly. It was a nut-free cake I had baked myself. And the friend Angela Ward, 34, was a nutritionist who knew exactly what I was allergic to and always stayed away from nuts. But the clip had been edited. No sound, no context, just me smiling, eating perfectly fine. I called Angela immediately. "Have you seen the video?" I asked. She let out a long sigh. "I saw it. That was an oatmeal cake. No nuts at all. You're willing to confirm that, right?" There was a pause. Then Angela spoke softly. "Melissa contacted my husband yesterday afternoon. She knows he's applying for a visa to Canada. She made some suggestions." I stopped breathing. "Are you saying she blackmailed you?" Angela's voice broke. "I'm sorry. Elle, I have a family. I can't." The call ended. The line went dead, like a pit had just opened under my feet. I wrote a long message to Vanessa, the editor who had helped me before. She read it, then replied only, "Right now, public opinion is leaning toward Melissa. We'll need stronger evidence if we want to turn this around." I went online. I started getting tagged in fake posts. Someone even posted a picture of me from high school, captioned, "Once expelled for violent behavior, now pulling the same stunts." I had never been expelled. That was an old rumor. From when I collapsed in class during my first allergic reaction. Everything came rushing back like a whirlwind, knocking me off my feet. Again. Claire called while I was curled up in my room. "Eleanor, they sent an anonymous letter to the hospital, accusing me of abusing my position to prescribe meds for friends." My throat tightened. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, but it scared me. And I think I should step back for a while." My heart sank. Not because Claire had betrayed me, but because I realized I was slowly being left alone. That night, I heard a noise outside my house. I shot up and peeked through the curtains. A cat darted across the street. On the other side, a shadow stood near the fence, not moving, just standing there. I held my breath, clutched my phone tightly, but I didn't call because I wasn't sure who I would even call anymore. A text message came through. Play with fire, and one day your whole house will burn. Unknown number. I stared at the screen. My hands went cold. My chest tightened. Victory, I thought, had been the peak. But it turned out to be just the slope before the fall. I locked all my social media accounts on Friday night, not because I was afraid, but because I couldn't bear to read another word. I sat in the corner of the kitchen. No lights on, no music playing. The vase of flowers my mother brought over last week had wilted. On the table, the lawsuit paperwork lay in messy stacks. Dust had already gathered along the edges of the folders. I hadn't eaten anything for 2 days. Not because I was on a hunger strike, just because I'd forgotten what food tasted like. I didn't feel hungry. I just felt empty. I called Claire. The call went to voicemail. I thought about leaving a message, but my voice was as rough as sandpaper. I called my mother. I was going to say, "I'm fine." But when she answered, I stayed silent. "Eleanor," my mother asked, her voice trembling. I lowered my head to the table and whispered, "I can't do this anymore." Silence for a long while. Then she said, "No one can do everything, Elle, but you're surviving, and that is extraordinary." I hung up, resting my head on my arm. Tears spilled out, not like before, silent, restrained. This time, they broke loose. I cried like a child, bitterly, shamefully, wordlessly. I saw each face in my mind. Melissa gave me a smug smile when I collapsed at the picnic. Jordan mocked me with a laugh when I begged for help. Claire, the only one who stood by me, is now silent too. Angela gave a guilty look when she said, "I can't help you." Each memory is like a tiny knife, cutting clean, no blood, but deep enough that I no longer knew how to call for help. I opened my laptop, typed into the search bar, what to do when the whole world turns its back on you. A foolish question, because Google doesn't know who you are. It can't understand what it's like when you pour every ounce of strength into surviving, only to have people call you a liar. I played the audio file. Melissa's voice came through. "Just half a teaspoon is enough." I hit stop. I couldn't listen anymore, because for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to fight. I went to the bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror, puffy eyes, cracked, dry lips. Dark circles like ink stains ran from my heart to my face. Is this me, Eleanor Brooks? The woman who once held her ground in a cutthroat industry, the one who designed the biggest gallery in the state. I lowered my head, rested my forehead against the mirror. The cold seeped down my spine. I survived. But survived. For what? A sudden gust of wind swept through the kitchen window. It carried a piece of paper to the floor. I stepped out, picked it up. It was a photocopy of the motion to withdraw the lawsuit. I'd printed it, just in case. I chose to give up. I held it in my hands. The paper was featherlight, but I couldn't tear it. My hands shook, just shook. No tearing. I sat down on the floor, held the paper close, and for the first time in many nights, I prayed. Not for victory, not for someone to come back. Just for one reason. I want to not give up on myself. Will someone reach down and pull Eleanor out of this pit, or will she have to find the light herself? With these very hands, already raw and bleeding, I woke up on a nameless morning. No alarm, no bird song. Only the pale sunlight slipping through the window blinds, casting across my swollen, aching cheek. I didn't cry, didn't scream. I just opened my eyes and kept breathing. I shuffled into the kitchen, cold water dripping from the faucet onto my hands. My hands were cold as stone, but they didn't shake anymore. I'm still here. Melissa hasn't managed to kill me yet. Neither has the humiliation. I saw the paper to withdraw my lawsuit still lying on the table, its edges slightly curled from the breeze. I picked it up. Light. But today, it no longer felt heavy. My phone pinged with an email. I was about to turn off notifications, but the sender's name made me freeze Claire West. I opened it, my heart expecting nothing. Just keep your habit open to see, then fold away like every other recent disappointment. But I just requested a transfer to the frontline ER. When I signed the papers, I thought of you. I chose to stay with those who needed to be kept alive, even when they had no one left standing beside them. If you still need me to testify, I will. Not for you, for myself. I lowered my head onto the table. This time, I didn't cry. No more tears left to fall. Just something warm stirring in my chest. Light. Very light. But real. I opened my laptop again. Went into the folder, Phase 1 Disruption. Then Phase 2 Retaliation. Both had been torn apart by Melissa, but she couldn't erase the roots. I opened a folder I had never named. It was simply labeled ? Inside were voice memos I'd recorded when I was still clear-headed. One clip played, my own voice speaking, "Maybe I'm not strong enough to win, but I'm strong enough not to be swallowed whole. If she turns me into a joke, then silence will be the microphone that amplifies it." I stopped the playback. For the first time in days, I smiled, though only faintly. Melissa was wrong to think I only wanted revenge. I don't need to destroy her. I just need to make sure I don't fall apart. I stepped into the bathroom and tied my hair up, splashed my face with cold water, looked into the mirror. The face was still swollen, still bruised, still pale. But my eyes, something in them had changed. I don't need to go back to who I was before. I just need to keep moving as the surviving version of myself. If you've ever fallen all the way to the bottom, but managed to keep a small flame alive inside, keep breathing. And if you need a place to remember you're not walking alone, subscribe to Revenge Mark. Some battles begin when they think you've already fallen. That evening, I sat back down in front of my planning board. For the first time in weeks, I swapped the black marker for an orange one. I wrote a new line, Phase 3 Rebuild, with fire, no retaliation, no insults. I'm not going to play by Melissa's rules anymore. I'll play in a way she'll never see coming. Because when you survive hell, what you carry out isn't fear, it's invincibility. I no longer need to scream just to be heard. I just need to stand long enough until they have no choice but to see me. Every day, I wake up at exactly 6:30 in the morning. No alarm, no reminder. My mind has already set itself to that cycle, as if my body understands this is no longer life, but the final stage of a war. I no longer think about winning or losing. I think about ending it the right way. Melissa is strong, not because she's smart. She's strong because she knows others will stay silent. Silent out of fear of losing their jobs. Silent out of fear of being isolated. Silent out of fear of her. But I am silent no more. And I am not alone. I reopen the list of every person she has targeted: Claire, Angela, Nina, even those who once messaged me privately to apologize but never dared to speak up in public. I don't pressure anyone. I just wrote one group email with the words simple: I don't need you to protect me. I just want Melissa to never do this to the next person. 4 people replied within 24 hours. 3 agreed to meet. 1 sent me a written statement. I went to see Holly, the reporter. I brought with me a thick file screenshots, audio recordings, edited video clips, alongside Angela's original confirmation. "What's your plan?" Holly asked. I sat up straight. This isn't a feature story. This is an official testimony. I want everything documented in the legal record and at the same time, for the public to know. Holly nodded, slowly, without a single wasted word. I'll handle the rest. I didn't call a lawyer right away. I drafted the preliminary indictment myself, line by line, section by section. I cross-checked it with state law. I sought out Marcus Hill, 42 years old, an independent criminal attorney known for taking on tough-to-swallow cases. We met at his small office, with no signboard and no receptionist. I handed him my draft. He flipped through it without a word for 10 minutes. Finally, he looked up. "You're not here to ask for my advice. You're here to make a statement." I didn't deny it. Exactly. I just need someone to finish the rest of the job. 4 days later, the official complaint was filed with the Buncombe County Prosecutor's Office. Included with it were proof that Melissa had deliberately spoken about the allergy, the original unedited clip from Angela, the recording of threats from a blocked number, a letter from Claire confirming interference in her work environment, the first published article and all the insulting comments that had been saved. Melissa didn't know. She still thought I had retreated into the shadows. She didn't know I was just quietly changing the batteries in the spotlight. That evening, I printed a monthly calendar. I marked the date of the first hearing in red ink. Next to it, I wrote only one sentence. I won't push you into the pit. I'll let you walk in yourself with exactly what you once threw at me. I sat back and turned off the light. Outside the window, the city still glowed. Inside me, so did I. The wind had shifted, and Melissa was no longer the only one holding the knife by the handle. They say that before the storm comes, the sky turns unnaturally calm. I never believed it, until that day, I stepped into the lobby of the Hilton Hotel, where the annual Interior Design Industry Conference was being held. The air was cold. The lights were a pale yellow. The sound of high heels echoed in measured beats across the marble floor. I knew Melissa would be here. Lighthouse Media, the company she used to work with, was the main sponsor of the event, and Melissa never missed a chance to be seen. I didn't come to meet her, but she spotted me first. I was standing near the registration table when I heard the sharp stop of heels behind me, and that familiar voice sweeter than sugar but sharp as a blade. "Oh, Eleanor Brooks, still not tired of playing the victim. Are you—" I didn't turn around right away. I took a breath. Slow, steady. Then I turned. Melissa stood there, lips painted in wine red, black body-hugging dress, eyes without a trace of worry, as if the articles, the recordings, or the lawsuits had never existed, as if she still held all the control. "I thought you'd vanished off the radar." She smiled, tilting her head. "But I guess moths always return to the light, no matter how many times they get burned." I looked straight into her eyes. Without blinking, I didn't come back for the light. "Melissa, I came back for the darkness you thought you owned." A beat of silence. Her gaze flickered. Slightly, but I saw it. She let out a short, mocking laugh. "You think you've won a couple of cheap articles, an anonymous lawsuit. Trust me, Eleanor, the world doesn't love whiners. They just like your story and forget you by the next day." I nodded. maybe so. But justice doesn't need to be loved. It only needs to be patient. Melissa stepped closer. The space between us was now just inches. You think you can scare me? I built this reputation from nothing. You're just an ugly stumble in my past, and I'll polish it away like I always do. I tilted my head, whispering, only this time. It's recorded, filmed, documented by lawyers, and this time, you don't control the light. Her body stiffened. Though her smile stayed in place, I saw it the first crack. You're playing a dangerous game. Eleanor. I replied softly, almost lightly, no. I'm just waiting for you to walk into the same place you once pushed me. We stood there. 2 women, 2 histories. One was trampled underfoot. One once climbed over others to stand tall. Now, both were on level ground, and the clock was ticking. The conference began. Melissa turned away, striding into the grand hall, without another word, and I didn't need to say more, because tomorrow, the official summons will be delivered, and Melissa Grant would have to sit down across from me under the light she once believed was her own private stage. I was ready for the moment of truth, and she had no way out. The courtroom that day was as cold as a freezer, not because of the air conditioning, but because of the way every pair of eyes was fixed on one single point, Melissa Grant. She was wearing a light gray suit, her hair neatly tied back, makeup just enough to look composed. But I saw the slightest tremor in her right index finger as she held her pen. I was called up first. Attorney Marcus stood beside me like a steady shadow. My voice didn't shake, didn't rush. It was clear, deliberate, each word precise. I am not here to convince this court that Melissa Grant intentionally harmed me. I am here to present the truth through her words, her actions, and her deliberate silence all this time. They played the recording. Melissa's voice, just half a spoonful. The whispers stopped. No one could call that a joke anymore. Then came Claire, dressed in nurse's scrubs, no makeup. She stood there, looking straight ahead, speaking with clarity. Eleanor Brooks nearly died. I was the one who administered the epinephrine. I can confirm her reaction was real and severe. Angela followed after. Her voice was slightly hoarse. She recounted the party years ago, the clip that had been cut and spliced. Then she submitted the original to the court. There was no room left for misunderstanding. Melissa began to fidget. Jordan, seated behind her, had gone pale. I saw them exchange glances, the kind of people share when they both know the game is almost over. When it was Melissa's turn to testify, she walked slowly, her face expressionless. She sat down, adjusted the microphone, and just as I expected, she smiled. I never wanted her to get hurt. I just took a joke too far. But haven't we all said something we didn't mean when we were angry? I looked at her, the same way I had once looked at my own reflection in the bathroom mirror back when I was close to giving up. Only now, my gaze was no longer empty. Marcus rose to his feet. Ms. Grant, do you remember what you said on John 12 during your live stream? Melissa hesitated. I don't recall exactly. Allow us to refresh your memory. A video played. There she was, barefaced, laughing loudly into the camera. If someone drives me crazy, all I have to do is throw a few nuts in their cake and that's it. No more laughter. No more words. Melissa sat frozen. Her entire body turned to stone. I rose to my feet, requesting to speak one last time. The court granted permission. I turned toward her, For the first time in years, I felt no fear, no anger, only lightness. You once said, if I wanted to kill Eleanor, all I'd need is a handful of walnuts. And me? Today, just one truth is enough for you to sit there, and for me to stand here. She lowered her head, silent. Every light in the room seemed to focus on that emptiness between who I used to be and what she was now enduring. But when you stand before someone who once wished to see you fall, and you no longer want them to suffer, have you already won? The verdict was delivered on a June afternoon. The sky was pale with sunlight. A light breeze drifted by, as if even the weather didn't dare to intrude on that courtroom. Melissa wasn't arrested. She wasn't handcuffed. She wasn't wearing a prison uniform. But when she stepped out of the courtroom, she couldn't lift her head anymore. The court found her civilly liable for willfully endangering another person's life, along with financial compensation and a 2-year restraining order. No applause, no cheers. I'm the only one standing still. My eyes followed that worn shadow fading away at the end of the long white hallway. I thought I would feel triumphant, thought I would feel satisfied. But what I felt, there was an emptiness. No one warns you about this, that after you win, you won't know where to go when your whole being has lived for one singular goal for so long. I left the courthouse with Marcus. He placed his hand on my shoulder, light as the breeze. You did the right thing, not an easy thing, but the right thing. I nodded, but my heart was as heavy as stone. A few weeks later, I received a card from Claire. She had moved to New Mexico. Starting over, I was happy for her. Even though I knew I was standing at a crossroads, unsure which way meant moving on, Angela sent me a short email. I'm sorry for staying silent for so long. If I could choose again, I would still speak up even if it took time. I didn't blame her. Didn't blame anyone. Everyone has their limits. So do I. My mother hugged me during our first dinner after the trial. You did something I never did in my life. You reclaimed your worth, with truth, not with anger. I rested my head on her shoulder, for the first time, not to collapse, but to lean on what was left. Melissa vanished from social media. She quietly withdrew from the PR community. No more articles mentioned her, no more photos, no more news. And yet, I still dreamed of her. Sometimes, in fragmented dreams, I would find myself standing in the kitchen, biting into a cookie, then collapsing, while everyone around me just laughed. I would wake in the middle of the night, cold sweat soaking my back. Sit and breathe. Look at the clock. 3:07 a.m. I didn't cry. Just thought an ending is never a period. It's just a pause. I got up, poured some water, leaned against the kitchen doorway, looking out. The streetlights were still on. The city was still silent. But this time I no longer felt swallowed whole. I survived. I won. But I also lost something forever. A piece of innocence. A trust. A few people. After everything, can you truly start over from the ruins you yourself helped create a month after the trial? I moved. Not far. Just away from the old apartment where everything had begun. The place where I had collapsed in the kitchen with a cookie in my hand. The place where I had written the lawsuit. The place where I had cried more than I ever thought I could. The new apartment was on the 7th floor of a quiet building. Not luxurious, not remarkable, but it had light. A lot of it. On my first morning there, I threw the windows wide open. The wind rushed in, curling through my hair. I stood in the middle of the empty kitchen, coffee cup in hand, and felt something strange. I wasn't waiting for anyone anymore. Not waiting for an apology. Not waiting for recognition. I was just breathing. Breathing for myself. And finally, I felt light. I no longer followed Melissa. I didn't search her name online. I didn't check comments. Didn't cross-check the news. Not because I had forgotten, but because I had accepted the truth. Some people will never take responsibility. And I no longer had to carry the weight of their cruelty. I reopened my little studio. Eleanor Design. No staff. Just an empty space with enough light to sketch out every idea I had once set aside. I didn't take big projects. I only did what made me feel whole. Claire called one late afternoon. On the other end was the sound of the desert wind whistling through the line from New Mexico. "You doing okay?" she asked. I smiled. "So, okay. I don't even need to say it." She didn't say anything else. We just stayed quiet, a kind of silence that wasn't awkward, and we weren't afraid. One evening, my mother stopped by. She brought a picture frame, a photo of me as a little girl, grinning in front of our old wooden house, holding an ice cream cone melting down my hand. I've kept this all along. I think it's time you remember who you were before anyone tried to make you forget. I hung it on the wall, not facing the door, not in the bedroom, but by the balcony entrance. So every time I stepped out, I would see myself back when I didn't know fear, didn't know betrayal, didn't know what hate was. I used to think destiny was something you had to fight for, but now I understand. Sometimes it's simply what you get when you let go of the pain, so your other hand is free to hold something better. If you've stayed with me all the way to this point, thank you. Not because you've heard a story, but because you stayed to hear the voice of someone who was once shattered and still chose to stand. If you've ever been in the dark and want to believe that light is real, leave a comment, share this story, and subscribe to Revenge Mark, where we tell stories not just to get even, but to find ourselves again. I stand on the balcony. The wind runs through my hair. In the distance, the city lights flicker. And somewhere deep inside me, it isn't a scar anymore, but a new bud. I am no longer who I used to be. I am not a victim. I am a survivor, and I have chosen to live without ever bowing my head again.